My name is Julia 34, and I've always been the one my family counts on. The responsible daughter with a good job who pays for everything. I never thought much about it until last month when I put down $8,000 for a perfect Thanksgiving venue. I wanted everyone to have a magical holiday. Then my dad looked me straight in the eyes and said I wasn't invited. All because he didn't approve of my boyfriend. That $8,000 was non-refundable. But what I did next taught my family they couldn't take me for granted anymore. Before I tell you what happened when I canceled the venue deposit, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. I've been the financial safety net for my family since I was 22. Right after college, I landed a position at a financial consulting firm and quickly moved up the ranks. While my siblings were still figuring out their paths, I was the one with a stable income and responsible habits. My father Richard always boasted about my success to his friends, but rarely acknowledged it directly to me. My mother Diane was sweet but passive, always deferring to my father's decisions. My sister Amanda, 2 years younger, bounced between jobs and relationships, while my brother Scott, the baby of the family at 28, was still trying to launch his music career. Every holiday, birthday, or special occasion, the planning and paying somehow fell to me. It started small at first. I bought the cake for Mom's birthday when Dad forgot. I covered Scott's portion of a gift when he was between gigs. I paid for the catering when Amanda hosted a housewarming but ran out of money. Small things grew into bigger expectations. Soon I was funding entire family vacations, holiday celebrations, and even helping with mortgage payments when my parents hit rough patches. The pattern was always the same: initial gratitude followed by the assumption that I would handle everything. Julia is so good with money, they'd say, as if my financial stability was some innate trait rather than the result of hard work and careful planning. What bothered me most wasn't the money. It was the subtle classism that ran through my family. My father, who had climbed from middle management to an executive position, judged people harshly based on their income and status. My mother, who came from a wealthy family, reinforced these values in quieter ways. They taught us that worth was tied to wealth, and I had absorbed that lesson too well for too long. I never pushed back much until I met Michael last spring. He was unlike anyone I'd dated before. A public school English teacher with a passion for education, he made far less money than my previous boyfriends, but he had something they lacked: genuine kindness and integrity. The first time I mentioned him to my family, my father immediately asked what he did for a living. When I told him, I watched his expression shift from interest to dismissal in seconds. "A teacher? Well, that's noble, I suppose," he said, exchanging a look with my mother that spoke volumes. Despite their lukewarm response, my relationship with Michael flourished. For the first time, I was with someone who valued me for myself, not my checkbook or connections. He supported my career without competition and showed genuine interest in my thoughts and feelings. As Thanksgiving approached, I hoped it would be the perfect opportunity for Michael to fully meet my family. A neutral, joyous occasion where everyone could see what I saw in him. I had no idea how wrong I was. In early October, I found this beautiful historic lodge available for Thanksgiving. It featured rustic wooden beams, massive stone fireplaces, panoramic views of the lake, and enough space to accommodate our extended family comfortably. The venue was usually booked years in advance for holidays, but they had a last-minute cancellation. The catch was the price tag, and the fact that they required a non-refundable deposit of $8,000 to secure the date. Without hesitating, I transferred the money. I'd spent similar amounts on family events before, though never quite this much at once. When I shared pictures of the lodge in our family group chat, everyone seemed thrilled. My mother gushed about the gorgeous kitchen facilities. Amanda immediately started planning Instagram photos by the lake. Scott was excited about the acoustic properties of the main hall, hinting he might perform. Even my father seemed impressed. "This is quite the find, Julia. How much did it set you back?" he asked during our next family dinner. When I told him the total cost and mentioned I'd already paid the deposit, he nodded approvingly. "Always the provider, aren't you? We're lucky to have you." The compliment should have felt good, but something about his tone left me feeling hollow. It was as if my primary value to the family was financial. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into planning the perfect Thanksgiving. I researched catering companies that could prepare a traditional meal with gourmet touches. I ordered custom decorations that would complement the lodge's rustic aesthetic. I created a shared document with driving directions, accommodation options for out-of-town relatives, and a detailed schedule. Every time I shared an update, the family responded with enthusiasm. But nobody offered to help with planning or expenses. It was just expected that I would handle everything as usual. The first sign of trouble came when I mentioned that Michael was helping me select wines for dinner. My father immediately questioned his knowledge. "Does he know anything about wine? We have certain standards, Julia." I defended Michael, explaining that he'd developed quite a palate despite not being wealthy. Not everyone expresses their refinement through spending, Dad. He changed the subject, but I noticed more frequent comments about Michael as Thanksgiving approached. Little digs about his career, questions about his family background, concerns about whether he would fit in with our relatives. Each time I pushed back a little harder, growing increasingly frustrated at their prejudgment of someone they barely knew. It was clear they had already decided he wasn't good enough, all because he chose a meaningful career over a lucrative one. Still, I continued with the preparations, investing more money in rental specialty ingredients, and hired help. By early November, I had spent close to $12,000 total, including the deposit. As always, nobody questioned the cost or offered to contribute. It was just Julia being Julia, the family ATM, with a smile. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, we had our regular Sunday family dinner at my parents' house. Everything seemed normal as we gathered around the dining table. Mom had prepared her signature roast chicken. Dad was pouring wine, and my siblings were bickering about some reality TV show. "So is everyone excited about the lodge?" I asked, trying to gauge their enthusiasm for my efforts. "It looks amazing in those photos you sent," Amanda said. "The lighting in that main hall is going to be perfect for photos." Scott nodded. "Yeah, and the isolation means we can be as loud as we want. No neighbors to complain about music." My father cleared his throat, and something about his posture made me tense up. "Speaking of the gathering, Julia, I wanted to ask about your teacher friend." "Michael," I corrected. "His name is Michael, Dad." "Yes, Michael. He's attending." I nodded, taking a sip of wine. "Of course. We've been together for 8 months now. He's looking forward to meeting everyone properly." A heavy silence fell over the table. My father set down his fork, wiped his mouth with his napkin, and leaned back in his chair. "You're not invited to Thanksgiving," he said casually, as if commenting on the weather. I choked on my wine. "Excuse me, Michael," he clarified. "He's not invited." "Why would you say that?" I demanded, feeling my face flush with anger. "This is a family gathering, Julia, with extended family coming in from out of town, people of a certain caliber." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Michael is important to me. That should make him important to you." "It's not personal," my father continued, though it obviously was. "We just don't think he'll fit in. Your cousin Bethany's husband is a surgeon. Your Uncle Patrick is bringing his new partner, who's a state senator. Can you imagine your teacher boyfriend trying to contribute to those conversations?" I looked around the table, hoping for support, but found none. My mother stared at her plate. Amanda examined her nails. Scott at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "If Michael isn't welcome, then I'm not coming either," I said firmly. My father's expression hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Julia. Of course you'll be there. You've already paid for everything. Speaking of which, did you remember to finalize the menu with the caterer?" That's when it hit me. The only reason they wanted me there was to handle logistics and cover expenses. I was the wallet, not a family member whose feelings and relationships mattered. "Let me be absolutely clear," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "If Michael isn't welcome at Thanksgiving, then neither am I." "You're overreacting," my father said dismissively. "Come alone and we'll discuss your relationship situation after the holidays." "My relationship situation?" I repeated incredulously. Yes, I think you're going through a phase with this teacher. You'll come to your senses eventually and find someone more appropriate. I stood up so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor. I've put down $8,000 on that venue. A non-refundable deposit. My father shrugged. You can afford it. Then don't expect my $8,000. I replied while gathering my purse. Or me. I walked out without waiting for a response, slamming the door behind me with a finality that felt both terrifying and liberating. I somehow managed to drive myself home before completely breaking down. When I walked through my door, I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Years of feeling used crashed down on me all at once. Michael called about an hour later. We had planned to meet up after my family dinner, but I'd forgotten to text him. When I told him what happened, his response wasn't what I expected. "I'm so sorry they hurt you," he said. Not sorry he wasn't invited, not angry about being rejected. His first concern was for my feelings. They've always been classist, I admitted, but I never thought they'd go this far. "This isn't about me," Michael said gently. "It's about control. You've been supporting them financially, and now that you're making independent choices they don't approve of, they're trying to pull you back in line." His words struck deep. I'd never fully acknowledged how my family manipulated me through financial expectations and emotional obligation. How many times had I paid for things I couldn't really afford just to maintain family harmony? How often had I silenced my own needs to meet theirs? That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the previous instances when I'd been taken for granted. The time my father called me selfish, when I hesitated to loan Amanda money for a car. The Christmas when I worked 60-hour weeks to afford presents for everyone, only to receive token gifts in return. The countless times my family made major decisions without consulting me, except when it came time to pay. I called my best friend Natalie the next morning. Unlike my family, she came from modest means and had worked her way through college alongside me. "They did what?" she exclaimed when I told her. "After you dropped $8,000 on a venue that's beyond entitled Julia." "Am I overreacting?" I asked, still second-guessing myself after years of having my feelings dismissed. "Absolutely not. They're using you, and they always have. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" That was the million-dollar question. I had several options. I could give in, attend alone, and maintain the status quo. I could skip Thanksgiving entirely but still let them use the venue I'd paid for. Or I could cancel everything. The deposit was non-refundable, so I'd lose that money regardless. But canceling would mean disrupting everyone's plans, disappointing extended family members who weren't involved in the conflict, and potentially damaging relationships beyond repair. Michael suggested an alternative. "What if we host our own Thanksgiving invite friends who accept both of us? Start new traditions." The idea was appealing, but I still felt torn. Despite everything, these were my family members. I loved them even when they hurt me. Was I ready to take such a drastic step? That evening my father called. I braced myself for an apology, but instead, he launched into a lecture about family obligations and how I was being childish. "I expect you'll come to your senses before Thanksgiving," he concluded. "The family's counting on you." Something in me snapped at those words. The family was counting on me, but not as a person with feelings and a life of my own. They were counting on me as a resource and open checkbook. By morning, my decision was made. I might lose $8,000, but I'd gain something far more valuable: self-respect. I called the lodge first thing Monday morning. The manager was sympathetic but firm about their policy. "The $8,000 deposit is non-refundable, Ms. Reynolds. It's stated clearly in the contract you signed." "I understand," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "I'm not asking for a refund. I just want to cancel the reservation." There was a pause on the line. "You're forfeiting the deposit. Are you sure?" "Completely sure. Is the venue available to other potential clients now that I'm canceling?" "Yes, though it's unlikely we'll book it this close to Thanksgiving." "Please make it available," I said. "Consider the deposit a donation." Next, I called the catering company, the rental suppliers, and the decorators. Most had cancellation fees, but they were minor compared to what I'd already lost. Within 2 hours, every arrangement for Thanksgiving was undone. I didn't immediately tell my family. Part of me wanted them to stew in the uncertainty, to wonder why I wasn't responding to their texts about menu preferences and seating arrangements. Another part was simply avoiding the inevitable explosion. The text started rolling in that afternoon. Amanda. Did you confirm we can check in early at the lodge? I want to scope out photo spots. Scott. Hey sis, can I bring my new amp set up? Thinking of doing some live music after dinner. Mom. Sweetheart, please call me about the sleeping arrangements. Your Aunt Meredith is asking questions. I responded to none of them, which was out of character for me. Usually I was the responsible one who answered immediately with detailed information and reassurances. By evening, the tone of the messages had shifted. Amanda. Julia, hello. We need to know about check-in. Scott. Are you ghosting us? Not cool when we're trying to plan? Mom. Julia. I'm getting worried. Please call me back. Finally, my phone rang with my mother's number. With a deep breath, I answered. Julia. Thank goodness, I've been so worried. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom, I said, keeping my voice level. Your father told me about your disagreement. I think both of you overreacted a bit, but that's no reason to ignore everyone's questions about Thanksgiving. I'm not ignoring anything, Mom. I canceled the reservation at the lodge. Silence. Then, what do you mean, canceled? Exactly what it sounds like. The venue is no longer booked for our family. Neither is the catering, or anything else. But that's impossible, she sputtered. Thanksgiving is in less than 2 weeks. The whole family is coming. Where will we go? What will we eat? That's not my problem anymore, I said, surprised at how liberating those words felt. Dad made it clear that my feelings and relationships don't matter to this family, so I'm stepping back. You can't just cancel family Thanksgiving because your father hurt your feelings. Think of everyone else. Did anyone think of me? Did anyone stand up for me when Dad basically called my boyfriend trash? He never said that. He didn't have to. The meaning was clear. The conversation deteriorated from there. My mother cycled through guilt-tripping pleading and accusing me of being selfish. When none of that worked, she finally broke down in tears. Your father is going to be furious, she whispered. I know, I replied. But maybe it's time he experienced the consequences of his words. Amanda called next, practically screaming into the phone about ruined holiday plans and Instagram content. Scott tried a different approach, attempting to mediate. Look, I get that Dad was a jerk, but did you have to nuke Thanksgiving for everyone? Grandma's flying in from Florida, for crying out loud. I'm sure Dad can figure something out, I said. He's very resourceful when he wants to be. The call I was dreading came that night. My father's name flashed on my screen, and I nearly let it go to voicemail. But I needed to face this directly. Julia Reynolds, I answered formally. What have you done? His voice was cold with fury. Exactly what I said I would do. You uninvited me and Michael from Thanksgiving, so I canceled the arrangements I made and paid for. Do you have any idea how childish and vindictive that is? You've embarrassed this family. Your cousin Bethany already booked her flights. Your grandparents were looking forward to seeing the lodge. I'm sorry they're disappointed, I said, and I genuinely was. But I'm not responsible for managing everyone's expectations anymore. You most certainly are when you've promised them something and then pulled the rug out. I demand you call the lodge back immediately and fix this mess you've created. The deposit was non-refundable, Dad. $8,000 gone. But you knew that when you decided I wasn't worth including unless I came on your terms. This is about that teacher, isn't it? You're throwing away family traditions for a man you've known less than a year. No, Dad. This is about respect. Something you've never given me, despite happily taking my money for years. He scoffed. So now you're keeping score after everything we've done for you. I almost laughed. What exactly have you done for me lately, Dad? Besides make me feel like my only value to this family is financial. The conversation devolved into threats and accusations. He told me I was no longer welcome at Christmas either if this was how I behaved. I told him that was fine by me. By the time we hung up, the bridge between us was thoroughly burned. Yet amid the guilt and anxiety, I felt something unexpected relief. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my family and stood by it regardless of the fallout. That night, Michael held me while I cried not out of regret, but from the emotional release of finally breaking a toxic pattern that had controlled me for too long. Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and crisp. Instead of rushing around managing family logistics, I woke up peacefully beside Michael. We had accepted an invitation from his colleague Sarah, who was hosting a Friendsgiving potluck. I made my grandmother's sweet potato casserole, the one recipe from my family that I truly cherished. Michael baked an apple pie. As we prepared our dishes side by side in my kitchen, I was struck by how comfortable and right it felt. Sarah's apartment was a modest but warm, filled with people from various backgrounds. Teachers, social workers, artists, retail managers. None of them had expensive clothes or prestigious careers, but they welcomed me immediately with genuine warmth. "Michael's told us so much about you," Sarah said, hugging me. "We're so glad you could join our little tradition this year." Throughout the meal, no one asked about my income or job title. Instead, they wanted to know my thoughts on books, travel experiences, and social issues. When I mentioned I worked in finance, there was interest, but no sudden elevation of my status. I was valued for my contributions to the conversation, not my bank account. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Having Thanksgiving at Applebee's because everything else is booked. Your father had to pull strings just to get us a large enough table. Grandma is very disappointed." But the message was clearly meant to make me feel guilty, and a month ago it would have worked. Now I felt a twinge of sadness, but no responsibility to fix the situation. More texts followed throughout the day. "Amanda, this is literally the worst Thanksgiving ever. Thanks a lot. Scott, Dad's in a terrible mood. Way to ruin everyone's holiday." Various relatives sent confused messages, having heard different versions of what happened. According to my cousin Bethany, my father had told everyone I had a mental breakdown and canceled everything without warning. The most surprising message came from my Aunt Patricia, my father's sister. "Julia, I heard what Richard did. Don't let him bully you. It was brave to stand your ground. Call me sometime. I've got my own stories." That small validation from a family member meant more than I could express. Maybe not everyone in my family shared my father's values after all. Throughout the day, I found myself comparing the warm, relaxed gathering I was experiencing with the tense, status-conscious Thanksgivings of my past. Here, people helped with dishes without being asked. They complimented each dish with genuine appreciation. They laughed easily and listened to each other. Michael stayed close, occasionally squeezing my hand when he sensed I was thinking about my family. His support never felt smothering or conditional. It was simply there, constant and true. By the end of the night, as we said goodbye to our new friends, I realized I hadn't just survived Thanksgiving without my family. I had actually enjoyed it more than any holiday in recent memory. The freedom from expectations and performance was intoxicating. "Thank you," I whispered to Michael as we drove home. "For what?" "For showing me what it feels like to be valued for who I am, not what I can provide." He smiled. "That's how it should always be." The weeks after Thanksgiving were quiet. My family's initial fury gave way to an uneasy silence. I didn't reach out, and neither did they, at least not immediately. I used the time to reflect on what I wanted our relationship to be moving forward. Could there be reconciliation? Should there be... Just before Christmas, my mother called. Her voice was hesitant, lacking its usual confidence. "Julia, I've been thinking a lot about what happened." I waited, not making it easier for her. "I should have said something when your father uninvited Michael. And you. That wasn't right." It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. "No, it wasn't," I agreed. "We've always relied on you so much," she continued. Maybe too much. I never realized how it must have felt for you. We talked for nearly an hour. For the first time, I was completely honest about how their treatment had affected me, how I felt valued only for my financial contributions, how their judgment of Michael had shown me their conditional love. My mother listened. Really listened, maybe for the first time. She didn't defend or excuse, just acknowledged my feelings. By the end of the call, we had tentatively agreed to meet for coffee after the holidays. Setting boundaries with my father was harder. When he finally called in January, his version of an apology was, "I may have spoken too harshly about your boyfriend." "His name is Michael," I corrected. "And yes, you did. But the larger issue is how you and the family have treated me for years." "What are you talking about? We've always been proud of you." "Proud of what I could provide, Dad, not who I am." We went back and forth, his defensiveness gradually weakening as I remained firm in my position. Finally, he sighed heavily. "I don't understand this new attitude of yours, but I don't want to lose my daughter over it." "What do you want from me?" "Respect," I said simply. "For me, for my choices for Michael. And an understanding that I won't be the family bank anymore. If I contribute to something, it will be because I want to, not because it's expected." He didn't like it, but he agreed to try. It was a small step, but an important one. With my siblings, the path to reconciliation varied. Amanda remained distant, still resentful of the Thanksgiving disaster. Scott, more adaptable by nature, made efforts to get to know Michael and even invited us both to one of his performances. As for extended family, the story of what really happened eventually circulated, countering my father's version. Some relatives reached out in support, while others maintained a polite distance, unsure which side to take. The most significant change, though, was within me. I no longer measured my worth by my family's approval or by what I could provide materially. I learned to say no without guilt and yes without obligation. I discovered that love shouldn't require erasing yourself or abandoning those you care about. Michael and I are still together, stronger for having weathered the storm. My family and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing. Some holiday gatherings are still tense, but others show glimmers of genuine connection. This Christmas, I offered to bring dessert to my parents' house. Just dessert, not the entire meal, not the presents for everyone, not the decorations. My father looked surprised when I arrived with just 2 pies and nothing else. But he said nothing when Michael walked in beside me carrying a bottle of wine. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments and old patterns threatening to resurface. But when my father raised his glass for a toast and included Michael by name, I knew that my $8,000 lesson had finally begun to sink in. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can do for the people we love is to show them who we really are and what we truly need, even when it costs us, even when it hurts. Because real family sees you, values you, and respects you for yourself, not for what you can give them. Have you ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted? What boundaries did you set, and how did it change your relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is never measured by what you provide to others, only by the love you give and receive freely.